A crowd of people, panic-stricken and carrying the queen bee, flee with a swarm of bees chasing after them, producing a loud. Several days have passed since the deadly honeybee race began. Looking into the sparkling eyes of the queen bee, Xiaolong gently pats her head, calming her down. Calm down a bit. Let's see, I'll take you to a place where no one can bother you. During this time, the group has reduced their sleeping time to focus all their energy on moving. Given the current situation, it's truly disastrous. While the crowd is resting, Xiaolong points far into the distance and shouts loudly. Everyone panics and follows a helpless person who says, "Ah, I can't run anymore." On the way here, some members of the Blood Red team have fallen behind completely. I'm determined this time to rely on Kung Fu to make it back properly. Suddenly, someone tumbles forward, shouting, "What? Another person has fallen behind." The people, running and worried, look back and see someone lying flat on the ground. Their teammate shouts loudly, "Xiaolong has fallen." As a result, the Blood Red team's queen has been left behind. He hurriedly urges everyone to quickly use Kung Fu and run faster, thinking to himself, if we distance ourselves from the queen bee, we probably won't be attacked anymore. He breathes heavily and asks, "Master Xiaolong, can we escape?" Xiaolong is slightly uncertain and replies, "Perhaps we can." 3 days later, despite his best efforts, Nguyen Zhang can no longer continue and collapses to the ground. He coughs and sputters, saying to the two people in front, "I'm sorry, Master Xiaolong. I can only go this far." At this moment, Xiaolong and Huanggan appear indifferent, their hair messy and disheveled. He is stunned and worries, calling out, "Boss!" After a moment of silence, Huanggan speaks up, "Xiaolong, let me carry you." Hearing this, he hesitantly refuses. "Miss Huanggan, but I can run by myself." Suddenly, Huangyan rubs her face with both hands. After recovering from the shock, her spirits brighten. She shows determination, smiling at him, "I can do it. The exit path will never abandon." At the main gate, 2 guards stand neatly dressed, holding weapons, seriously performing. Hearing footsteps echoing from afar, the 2 guards look up in confusion and murmur. Seeing the approaching figure, one exclaims in astonishment, "Oh, the miss has returned." Only 2 people can be seen struggling, their eyes darkened from sleeplessness. Xiaolong is walking while guiding Huang'an. The gate guard can't believe his eyes, his mouth agape asking, "Miss." The entire exit becomes chaotic, firing signal rockets into the air to call the entire family hierarchy immediately. The senior master and the family head hear the signal rockets and immediately open the door to run outside. The family head anxiously asks, "Is something serious happened?" Someone immediately reports, "Miss Huang'an." As soon as they arrive, they see Huang'an, looking pale, being supported by family members. Xiaolong is anxious, standing beside them looking truly miserable. The family head, unable to bear seeing this, doesn't dare to believe his eyes and asks. The family head hugs his daughter tightly, heartbroken, and shouts at Xiaolong, "What's going on?" Xiaolong hurriedly kneels and stammers an explanation. "Please calm down, sir. Miss Huang'an is just exhausted after 10 days of nonstop kung fu training." When he thinks of something, his tone becomes serious. "But now is not the time to talk about this. We need to go to the martial arts school immediately." The senior master is astonished and asks, "What? The martial arts school? Why?" He doesn't answer immediately, but places his hand on his chest as if trying to pull something. He embraces the queen bee, lifting her up for everyone to see. He continues, "The queen of the golden hair Wind King will soon be followed by other bees. We must go to the ancient tree at the martial arts school immediately." At this moment, the senior master can't help but laugh loudly. "Ha ha ha, this boy is truly promising. His future will definitely be remarkable." On this side, the family head's expression isn't very good. He asks, "What's wrong? Weren't you supposed to collect honey? Why did you bring the queen bee back?" Without letting him answer, the senior master hugs him by the shoulders and says, "All right, let's go." This surprises him, and he exclaims, "Huh?" He uses kung fu to embrace Xiaolong and leaps into the air, startling him. He shouts loudly, "Oh heavens!" Meanwhile, the people below hurriedly cover their faces to protect themselves from the blowing sand. Xiaolong is lifted high into the air by his embrace, making him dizzy and confused. Suddenly, he panics and shouts, "Ah!" The senior master, hearing his loud cries, worries and glances back, asking, "What's wrong?" He sees a familiar dark yellow mass approaching in the sky and hurriedly reports, "The old family and the swarm of bees are approaching in droves." Hearing this, the senior master calmly replies, Crowded? Did you bring all of them here?" After speaking, he accelerates forward, saying, "Come on, hurry up." He experiences a sudden increase in speed and panics, shouting, "Ah!" The senior master lands roughly, causing rocks and soil to scatter everywhere. He brings him to the large ancient tree and announces, "We've arrived, Xiaolong." He quickly hugs the queen bee and rushes toward the tree in front of them. Xiaolong looks up at the massive tree and says, "Golden Hair Wind King, this is the place I've mentioned. From now on, this is your home." The bees in his hand flutter their wings, making a buzzing sound. He points to the large hollow in front of him and asks, "Is everything okay?" The response is still just the sound of wings flapping. The golden hair wind king cautiously flies to the side of the tree trunk to observe. After careful observation, he turns his head to look at Xiaolong, smiling brightly. Seeing him like this, he is secretly happy, seemingly pleased that Xiaolong has met him. Seeing the swarm of bees approaching, the senior master urgently calls out, "Xiaolong, let's leave here quickly. The swarm is coming." Hearing this, he turns around and responds, "Yes, sir." As the bees fly overhead, creating a loud sound, everyone below looks up in amazement and worry. The golden hair wind king sees the swarm and is instantly joyful, continuously flapping his wings and buzzing loudly. He quickly leads the swarm into the base of the tree he just observed, completing his inspection. The senior master looks at the scene before him, continually exclaiming, "Oh my, I've never witnessed anything like this in my life." Xiaolong also looks on and sighs, "Ah!" Seeing the bees flying in and out of the tree trunk, he sighs in relief. The golden hair wind king has succeeded in being captured. A bee is seen sticking its tongue into water contained in a wooden. Watching the bees gather in groups to drink water, he is pleased that the golden hair wind king has been exhausted from chasing after a little sugar water to regain strength. It's often said that sharing a meal fosters relationships, and kindness is nurtured through it. Luckily, there's something similar to sugar here. Fortunately, the people outside stand aside, observing happily and commenting, "They're eating so well, and they look so cute up close." Seeing the golden hair wind king happily drinking sugar water, he is secretly glad. Doing this should reduce their vigilance a bit. If they realize I'm their master, that's even better. Suddenly he shouts, "Ah!" The senior master hears this and asks, "What's wrong?" He hesitantly asks, "What about Miss Huan?" The senior master glances sarcastically and asks, "Now you remember? You realize from the tired appearance of the young lady?" He becomes even more hesitant and continues, "She was so exhausted that I had to bring the little girl to her mother for care. But I didn't expect you to make her use kung fu for 10 days nonstop. You didn't think that, Xiaolong?" Hearing this, Xiaolong doesn't dare to face him and shyly responds, "Yes, sir. I'm really sorry. I only slept about 2 hours each day. The rest was all running." Yes, indeed. At this moment, the senior master suddenly remembers something and asks Xiaolong, "Remember the people you brought along? Where's the blood-red team now?" At this moment, he is sweating profusely, his face drenched with sweat. "I'm a bit unsure, but I guess they might have Hearing this, the senior master can only close his eyes and laugh, "Ha ha!" Following the delegation, the blood-red team was later safely brought back into the family's embrace. In Huanggan's room, warm sunlight streams through each window. After hearing Xiaolong recount everything, she is happy, as it seems that the golden hair wind king has regained his strength. "That's lucky." Xiaolong also smiles and responds, "Yes, Miss Huang'an." Thinking about the bees, he adds, "Now they follow the family into the mountain. Currently, they are extracting honey from the poisonous flowers in the mountain." "I see," she nods. "Oh heavens, they look so adorable." Suddenly, a loud voice interrupts the conversation. "Mr. Xiaolong! Mr. Xiaolong!" Xiaolong glances outside and responds, "What's the matter?" He hurriedly reminds Baidu to maintain the rule of only holding tightly onto the door with both hands and urges him, "We need to go outside for." He breathes heavily, takes a deep breath, and continues, "The golden hair wind king's condition seems strange. They look like they're searching for something." Xiaolong contemplates, He quickly runs outside, with Huang'an following behind. High above, a few golden hair wind kings are already waiting. Seeing the bees scattered above his head, he astonishedly asks, "Really?" The bees hear his voice and immediately all look towards him. The sound of wings flapping fills the air. Seeing them continuously clinging to his head and body, he is confused. "Huh? Are you guys okay?" Huang'an also looks worried. "Miss Xiaolong, are you all right?" The swarm of bees still relentlessly drags his arms. Watching them bite tightly onto his clothes and trying hard to pull him up, he anxiously asks, "Why are you guys doing this?" Suddenly, his feet begin to lift off the ground. He can only helplessly laugh bitterly. "Ah!" People on the ground look up to see Xiaolong being dragged away by the swarm, moving further and further away. Huang'an opens her mouth in surprise and calls. The swarm drags him to the base of the ancient tree and then releases him. The sound of wings flapping loudly rings in his ears as he staggers and lands on the ground, exclaiming. His eyes widen in astonishment at the sight before him. He is stunned and asks, "What happened to your bee colony?" A bee flies to the back of him and uses its strength to push him inside. He follows along, moving while smiling. "It's okay, I understand you want me to come in." As he enters, he rolls his eyes and looks inside, exclaiming, "Oh!" Looking at the neatly arranged golden honeycomb cells, he can't help but think, the hive is quite well built, and the diligent honey gathering is already underway. A bee slowly flies closer to him, glancing around and murmuring, So this is the queen bee," he realizes, seeing her gaze at him with immense affection. She flies to land on his arm, gently flapping his wings, and softly asks, "Do you want me to lift you up?" In response, he hears stronger flapping sounds. However, the swarm becomes denser, covering his face to the point of distorting his features. He has a headache, thinking, "These guys are clinging to me so much that I can't move." He lowers his head, lifting the queen bee as she desires. He only sees her big, sparkling eyes looking up at him. The queen bee slowly closes her eyes, extending her front legs to touch his face. Xiaolong, seeing her demeanor, is astonished and shouts, "Ha! Ha!" He tried to drill, but it was too late. The queen bee approached his face closely, causing his face to flush red for a moment. He silently groaned in his head. Ugh! He felt his lips touch something soft, his entire body becoming warm, his eyes becoming blurry, and his mind spinning. Instinctively, he swallowed hard, astonished to discover that something was overwhelming him. A swarm of bees flew around, watching as the queen bee forcibly. His lips parted in the middle, and bubbles of air appeared. He hurriedly released her and breathed heavily. Phew! He placed his hand on his stomach and covered his mouth, blushing as he pointed at her and stammered, "You, Queen Bee. This is my first time, so what exactly are you doing?" He felt his entire body lose control, filled with horror. His body went limp, collapsing to the ground with a thud. His eyes sparkled as he lifted his head, searching for the angry queen bee, clenching his teeth. He saw her seemingly smiling at him, not understanding and wondering if she had given him. After the intimate contact with the queen bee, Long lay curled up on the ground, his face showing pain. He struggled to groan, "Ugh!" feeling his face become hot, with white foam flowing from his mouth. Behind him, he felt an uncomfortable, strange itchiness enveloping his entire body. He rolled over but couldn't alleviate the suffocating sensation within him. His vision became blurry, mucus continuously flowed from his nose and mouth, and he could hear his heart pounding loudly. He reached out towards the queen bee, struggling to groan. "Humph. Did you give me something to eat?" As his eyes gradually closed, he saw her looking at him innocently and called out. Before his eyes fully shut, he heard Huang'an's worried voice calling, "Long, Long." Then the image of her calling out, "Master Thigh of the family, Long, something is wrong. He seems to have swallowed a very powerful elixir." His vision went completely dark. He heard Huang'an panic, "Long, wake up." Then Taithungja said, "I will guide the energy to help you." When he opened his eyes, he saw Huang'an holding a cloth, preparing to place it on his forehead. Seeing him awake, she happily said, "Long, you're awake, aren't you?" He sat up, rubbed his head, looked around, and asked, Where am I?" The lady replied, "It's the medicine hall of the medicine sect." She gently swept her hair behind her ears, and then recounted everything. Seeing Long being taken to King Kim Mao, how she and the family hurried over, but when they arrived, he had already lost consciousness, so they brought him here. She asked, "Do you remember anything that happened?" He hesitated and replied, Recalling the situation, he remembered holding his face with a troubled mind after his first kiss with her. Seeing his condition like that, Huang'an worriedly asked, "Long, is your master okay? Is there anything unusual with his body?" Seeing him silent, she suggested, "Should we call the family?" He hurriedly stopped her. No need. It's just me." Upon mentioning this, he fell silent again and took a deep breath. He gathered his thoughts and said, "The queen bee forced me to eat her food. Maybe that's why this happened." Huang'an curiously asked, "What did you eat?" He seemed unsure and replied, I'm not sure of the exact name, but if I could name it, I'd call it King Fong's essence." She questioned, "Fong's essence? What's that?" He smiled and nodded. "Exactly. Worker bees collect nectar and pollen to survive. Only worker bees, those who work their whole lives, eat nectar and pollen. She continued. What about the queen bee? He explained. From birth to death, she only consumes King Fong's essence produced by the worker bees. Now he realized why the queen bee forced him to eat King Fong's essence. It is the royal jelly. Hoang understood. So that's the lifelong food of the queen bee. Thinking about it, his voice suddenly became cheerful. But King Fong's essence has another special effect. She heard this and asked, what effect? He excitedly explained, normally worker bees live just over a month, but the queen bee, thanks to King Fong's essence, can live 60 times longer. Isn't that extraordinary? She was amazed and tried to stop him. Long, calm down. She blushed, coughed lightly to cover her embarrassment, and said, I see. The question has been answered. She continued, the internal cultivation method you've been practicing is the 5-poison primordial technique. Although it's only a basic method, it can't fully absorb all the energy from the elixir. Hoang sighed softly. So King Fong's royal jelly has an effect equivalent to 2 victories in internal cultivation, right? You've achieved 60 times the effectiveness, and your master has obtained 50. Hearing her speak, she congratulated him. Congratulations on your enlightenment. He was astonished and couldn't speak. 10. At this moment, Hoang hesitated and she covered her embarrassment on her face with a cloth and said, later, look into the silver mirror once. It seems King Fong's essence has other effects as well. He heard this, opened his eyes wide in astonishment, and repeated, another Long gently touched his face, wondering, silver mirror? Indeed, when he looked at himself in the mirror, he was stunned. He raised his hand to his cheek softly. He vaguely understood that royal jelly has such effects. What? That country bumpkin from Hainam is gone? Long gently pressed his fingertip to his cheek, feeling his features become more delicate, his skin softer, resembling that of a woman's. Thinking about something, sweat droplets formed on his face. His face flushed so much that he forgot to pull his finger away from his cheek. Imagining himself as a more feminine version, he smiled brightly and introduced, hello, I am Wei Ling. He panicked, covering his face, and wondered, how can the queen bee's royal jelly eat like? He hurriedly bowed his head, groped to unzip his pants, remained silent, holding his breath, not daring to make a sound. Then he pulled down his pants to check if his subordinate was still there. After checking, he lay flat on the ground, lifting his head to look at the ceiling, and sighed in relief. Good, she's still where she should. He remembered Hoang saying that if the family hadn't guided the energy, something big would have happened. He thought to himself, maybe I should go and thank her, but almost endangered his life before being saved. Today was a rather cold day with foggy weather, making the distant mountains appear hidden. The visibility was significantly obscured, and he could only see the treetops at the nearest distance. Long walked along his usual path, but he felt something strange because everyone kept staring at him. Seeing the ladies look at him and smile, he silently speculated, today I suddenly feel unfamiliar gazes. Is it because my internal cultivation has increased? He hurriedly ran like a ghost, thinking to himself, first, I must escape from here. Behind him echoed the loud laughter of the ladies. At the entrance of the Four Rivers restaurant, he turned out. Xiaolong stood hesitantly outside the door, unable to proceed inside. Ko stood lurking outside the gate. He could only see the dining table, which was now full of colorful dishes with all kinds of flavors. At this moment, everyone had sat down at the table. The family members were successively serving more dishes to the madam. While absent-mindedly the madam carefully observed him and exclaimed, "Oh, your face looks brighter than before." Then she inquired, showing concern, "Is your health better now?" Xiaolong bowed his head and folded his hands, replying, "Yes, madam. I apologize for causing you worry." The madam clapped her hands sincerely, happily saying, "It's nothing. If you have a miraculous encounter, it's..." After speaking, she turned to the young lady and teased, "Oh my, look at this complexion. Huang'an must love it." Huang'an blushed deeply and awkwardly replied, "Oh, maternal lady." Then she hesitantly patted the drum. "Come on, Xiaolong, sit down." Amid the joyful laughter of the madam, Ko gently responded, "Yes." Everyone sat down in their places. The family members were still bringing up the last dishes. While the family members were serving tea, the family head took interest and opened his mouth to ask about Xiaolong. "Are you feeling better?" Ko nodded obediently. "Yes, madam. I apologize for causing you worry." Then he respectfully continued, "Thank you, sir. I heard that you have examined my health." The family head smiled and said, "Is that so? If you've had a miraculous encounter." At this moment, the family head interjected, "Now please tell us what happened." He could not hide his curiosity. I've heard about the Feng Wang chap from Hoangan. What exactly happened? You don't know where to start, Ko said, habitually touching his face, then spoke. The story is. You remember our first kiss? He closed his eyes and said, maybe because the queen bee just laid eggs, the king bee of Kim Mao Feng Wang tried to repay the favor to you. Because of that, I was dragged back to the hive and suddenly granted the title of. Then Ko cheerfully concluded, I think everything that has happened stems from this. The madam covered her mouth and exclaimed, this is so strange. The family head sighed. Oh, even animals of the mid-tier know how to repay favors. Then he suggested, by the way, could you try to find more Feng Wang chap? If possible, it would be very useful for our family. The honey from the Kim Mao Feng Wang is already quite useful, but if it's Feng Wang chap, it would definitely be extremely helpful. The madam was only concerned about the cosmetic benefits of Feng Wang chap, so she urged, brother-in-law, could you find more Feng Wang chap? Seeing everyone's eyes focused on him, Go gently coughed. Hoangan turned to him and asked, oh really? Xiaolong, can you find it again? He closed his eyes and gently replied, Remembering what he knew, Ko thought to himself, if it's just regular bees, they need to build many hives for the queen bee, known as Huangdai, and utilize worker bees to collect royal jelly. Remembering his pathetic appearance running away from the swarm, yelling, Xiaolong Gongzi, isn't this situation completely different? Ko speculated. If I try this with the Kim Mao Feng Wang, who is smart, he would surely be transformed into a hive immediately. Thinking about the innocent appearance of the queen bee, Ko pondered. Originally, royal jelly is food for the larvae created by worker bees, yet we are directly fed by the queen bee. So is this substance completely different? After a moment of silence, he opened his mouth. Here, I'll be straightforward. It probably can't be done. The family head heard this and urgently asked, why not? For what reason? The madam was also anxious. Brother-in-law, why not? Ko replied, even if people can eat it, would anyone dare to? At this moment, the family head was just beginning to speculate. Is it the strange taste or the smell? He gently scratched his head and shook it. It's not like that. Then he gave a shocking answer. This Feng Wang chap is secreted from the mouth of the queen bee. It seems it needs to be directly transferred by the queen bee. Fearing that people wouldn't understand, he explained further, it's like kissing. You have to have mouth-to-mouth contact. The substance from the queen bee has to enter the mouth. The family head was astonished, his mouth agape. What? Contacting with the queen bee? The madam also stammered. Huh, what do you mean? The family head had to give up hope and said, if that's the case, it seems impossible to find more, unless it's Xiaolong whom the Kim Mao Feng Wang favors. For others, it's impossible. Suddenly, chopsticks fell on the table, making a noise that attracted everyone's attention. Hoangan didn't look at him, but in a deep voice asked, do you have to contact with? She couldn't help but cover her mouth, glanced at Xiaolong, and asked, do you have to have mouth contact with the Kim Mao Feng Wang?